Did you know that using social media can reduce the gray matter in your brain? That means that you are literally making yourself dumber the more time you spend on social media. Good morning, Dr. Council and my fellow scholars. My name is Liam Smith, and today I will be informing you of the dangers of social media using the wonderful art that is neuroscience. Today I intend to teach you about the basics of neuroscience and how it can be used to see just how bad being on social media is for you and your brain. Now, how does the brain process information and make connections? An excellent question. According to an article written by Johns Hopkins Medicine on their website, which is considered the founding institution of modern medicine, the brain has a variety of different parts, all with various functions. These parts talk to each other, forming our thoughts and our actions. For context, the human brain has four essential lobes. The frontal lobe, which controls our personality and decision-making, this red structure in the front. The parietal lobe on the top, which controls our spatial awareness and sense of touch, this yellow structure. The occipital lobe in the back, which controls our vision, this purple structure. And finally, the temporal lobe on the side of the head, which controls our auditory control or our hearing, this green structure. Another structure is the amygdala, which is located at the center area of the brain on the inside and controls the brain's reward system, stress, and our perception of threats around us, or more simply, the flight or fight response. As you can see, this purple structure here in the center. For all these parts of the brain to talk to one another, there is a mechanism in place called vortices, as explained by a gentleman under the name of Walter J. Freeman in an article he wrote in July of 2009. Explains that vortices are the collection of various synapses or connection points firing in the brain to connect and transmit signals throughout the brain's various parts, like the lobes and the amygdala, to conduct function, and to communicate with one another, allowing us to think and to move. With this background knowledge, I want to now explain how social media itself affects the brain. Social media, or the internet in general, has a troublesome ability to interrupt and disrupt the brain's reward system or the connections going on in the amygdala. In a study conducted by Qinghua He, Afir Terrell, and Antoine Baccar in March of 2017 using MRI scans and voxel-based morphometry, they found that social network site addiction, or SNS addiction, correlated with a more impulsive brain and reduction in gray matter. As you can see, these are the results of their studies, and as shown here, in the various parts of the brain, there is a massive decrease in how much gray matter you have in direct proportion to the degree of your addiction, which makes up all of your senses, movements, and emotions. Every emotional and physical reaction and task is controlled and affected by gray matter to some degree. These researchers also found that this addiction to social media affected the brain just as bad as being addicted to something like gambling or substances, for example. For my final point, I want to talk about the potential long-term effects and the effects on the youth in regards to social media. The lasting effects or long-term of social media addiction hasn't been properly studied in adults, but it has been studied thoroughly in adolescents and young adults with predictions about how it may affect the brains in the future. There was a study conducted by Leon M. Mendez and his colleagues that analyzed the brains of people with internet addiction and smartphone addiction using MRI scans. Mr. Mendez and his colleagues found that both addictions had a drastic reduction of gray matter in the frontal lobe, mainly the orbitofrontal cortex or the prefrontal cortex, which is where you conduct executive function. This controls your planning, reasoning, and problem-solving skills. But what's more important to that is that there was also found to be an increase within the nucleus accumbens, where the brain associates reward, pleasure, and addiction. It was stated by these researchers that such addictive behaviors may induce permanent changes in the neural network and impair the functioning of the prefrontal cortex in children. To simplify everything, the brain has 5 important parts: the 4 lobes, the temporal lobe, occipital lobe, parietal lobe, and the temporal lobe, as well as the amygdala, all of which interact and communicate with the use of vortices. And social media dampens the brain by reducing gray matter in the frontal lobe, which is what gives you the ability to reason and make critical connections, while increasing gray matter in the nucleus accumbens, which affects your impulsive behaviors, your addictions, and your feelings of pleasure. Dr. Council and my fellow students, I appreciate your patience and attendance. It was a great honor to be able to talk to you all about this. I thank you all for your attendance.